So good to be here again today. I think I'm like probably the fourth or fifth person today to say good morning. Good to have you here today. So glad we could gather. We're in a bit of a teaching series, like a series of teachings we're 5 weeks into a 6-week series. And so if you're new with us today, you're kind of like coming in a conversation that's been happening for almost a month and a half that we have been calling Theogenetics. Theo means God, and genetics is this thing that's inside of us. And the concept of this series is that we believe that every person is created by God and is a gift. Doesn't contain gifts, but you are a gift, that you're a gift to the world from God. And the text we've been looking at for 6 weeks comes from one of these letters that Pastor Josh shared about earlier, a letter written to a church in Ephesus. The book is called Ephesians, and the church in Ephesus was a really diverse church. It had people from all different backgrounds, Romans and Jews, and different spiritual backgrounds, religious backgrounds, ethnic backgrounds, and they're all coming together trying to be the church that centers Jesus, but they all have different ways of making decisions, right? Like, did you know that different cultures have different ways they make decisions? And so they're trying to figure out like who decides, right? And so this letter is written to the church in Ephesus. And this is the text that addresses some of that in their midst. Let's look at this together. Ephesians chapter 4 is where we've rested now for the last 5 weeks. Ephesians chapter 4, starting in verse 4, the letter says this: "You are one body and one spirit, just as God also called you in one hope. There is one Lord, one faith, one baptism, one God and Father of all, who is over all, through all, and in all." Goes on, verse 7, "God has given his grace to each one of us, measured out by the gift that is given by Christ." What's he saying here? Doesn't matter if you're Jew or Roman, whether you grew up with this or you're new to this, God has given each of us grace. Everybody, every person has God's grace in the DNA of who they are from Christ. Now, he kind of go down to verse 11, he gets into kind of but how, right? So it says, so he gave some apostles, some prophets, some evangelists, some shepherds, and some teachers. His purpose was to equip God's people for the work of serving and building up the body of Christ until we all reach the unity of faith and knowledge of God's Son. God's goal is for us to become mature adults. God's goal is for us to become mature adults. We have any mature adults in here? Didn't think so. Okay, so this is going to be really important for us. To be fully grown, measured by the standard of the fullness of Christ. Now, the idea here is that the DNA, the theogenetics in us lean towards these apostles. Some of us are prophets, some of us are evangelists, some of us are shepherds, some of us are teachers. Now, most of those words are weird words. Most of those words don't have very much context for us today. So sometimes when we talk about this passage, we talk about it like APEST, the APEST passage, or the fivefold gifts, ministries of the church. Apostle, prophet, evangelist, shepherd, teacher. APEST. We following this? Right. All right, I'm done. Good. Thanks, guys. That's great. Okay. Right? And apostles, right? Apostles are for the early church, this would have had definite meaning. The apostles for them first were the 12 dudes who hung out with Jesus. And they were the ones that were helping organize the movement, right? So the idea is that as we grow, we're going to have to figure out systems and structures. How do we make those decisions? Well, the idea was that if we want to organize around Jesus, we want to operate in the wisdom of Jesus, we should look to the people who knew Jesus best, the people that spent time with Jesus. And so the early church referred to them as the apostles. And so the apostles are really connected with the DNA of Jesus, the kind of the organizing principles. We see this energy in our own midst today. Like a lot of like entrepreneurs have this energy, this kind of like risk-taking ability. Well, the reason that entrepreneurs are so comfortable with risk is because they wrap their head around like the first principles of something, the organizing principles of something. And so for entrepreneurs, in their brain, it's like, well, we can grow this. As long as we kind of understand the first principles of this, then it's safe to keep growing and keep moving and keep going, right? These are the apostles. Now, prophets in our midst, this would have had biblical imagery. This comes from the Jewish tradition of prophets. So prophets in the Jewish scriptures were these individuals who at times were a little bit reclusive, but at times would kind of pull away and were really connected with the heart of God. But then once in a while throughout Jewish history, these prophets would come out of their reclusiveness. Maybe it was their prayer life, or would come out of the mountains. Some of them lived really far away, and they would speak truth to power. They'd say, listen, because of the heart of God, you need to stop doing that. We have to stop treating people like that. We have to stop ignoring these people over here and favoring these people over here, because they were connected to the heart of the matter, to the heart of God. That they felt that treating people certain ways dishonored the core and the heart of who God was. Now, evangelists in our midst, we talk about evangelists, this would have come with more of a literal understanding. So the word evangelist literally meant like the sharers or bearers or carriers of good news, So the evangelists in our midst, we've been joking as we've been talking about evangelists in our church a lot. The evangelists in our midst are like the people who like go to a restaurant and can't not tell all their friends about it, right? These are the evangelists in our midst. And what the apostle is saying in this letter is saying some of you are evangelists. Some of you are people who can both identify the good news that's happening among you and tell other people about it. Now today we're going to spend most of our morning talking about shepherds. Now this would have had vocational imagery. Folks at this time would have known some shepherds, would have had an idea. This was like a common job, a visible job that people would have had. Shepherds were the people who worked in the fields and cared for the sheep. And the teachers, we're going to talk about next week, teachers would have had this imagery of those who taught in the temple, those who taught the law or the scriptures in the temple for the Jewish folks. But for the Romans, probably they had teachers in their midst who would have taught them in the education system, in the schools, right? So they would have understood teachers as this function. Now, the way this often plays out over church history is that apostles and prophets tend to be more on the pioneering end of things. Apostles have this crazy, wild idea, this new thing we're going to start, this new place we're going to go, this new way we're going to go about things, this new way to organize people. And they can figure it out. They understand the first principles. They get people organized really quick. And the prophets come along early on to make sure that these systems that are being built by the apostles don't look like the same systems that the Romans were building, or the same systems that the Jews were building, or the same systems that America operates on. The prophets come along to make sure that, listen, the systems and structures we're building can't just be about the systems and structures. We also have to stay connected to the heart of God. So apostles and prophets often are on the pioneering end of things getting started. Now, shepherds and teachers come along later on in the process on the other side. Shepherds and teachers come along and they start looking around going, man, there's a bunch of people here. We got to make sure they're taken care of. We're going to make sure this stays healthy. Because if the people don't stay healthy, this is not going to sustain, is it? So shepherds and teachers almost turn back towards the community and help the family, the organization, the church continue to sustain over long periods of time and stay healthy. Now, evangelists, they sit in the middle. They sit in the middle and they're just like so excited about everything, right? They're just out there. They're like, have you heard about this new thing we're starting? It's really, really cool, right? Have you met this person who comes along and have you heard of these stories about these people? They're getting healed of their past wounds and their traumas. You got to come be a part of this. Have you heard the band? The band is so good. The evangelists are just out there talking about all the things. And you can see how over time, how organizations, churches, families grow. Apostles and prophets starting things and getting things connected to the DNA and the heart of things. Evangelists going out and finding people who would love to be a part of the thing. And then shepherds and teachers coming along, making sure it sustains and goes. It's in the fabric of our society that every human has some variance of all of these pieces inside of them. And then each of us have certain energies from these that are stronger in us that come from the person and presence of Jesus. There's your review. We good? All right, good. All right, so today I want to talk about shepherds, and we want to dial in with shepherds. We seasonally talk more about shepherds around Christmas time. You know, like that we start talking about the birth of Jesus, and there's like this little verse in Luke that talks about the shepherds who are in the fields. We sing about it, right? We sing about it. The song "Go Tell on the Mountain." The shepherds kept their watching. Silent flocks by night. Okay, it's too early for Christmas songs, okay? Right, but that's that song. It actually comes from this verse in Luke chapter 2. Luke 2, verse 8 says this. Jesus is born in Luke chapter 1. It says, nearby shepherds were living in the fields, guarding their sheep at night. And right in this simple sentence tells us a lot about how shepherds, at least healthy shepherds, operate. Check this out. Nearby shepherds were living where? In the fields. In the fields. The shepherds among us are deeply incarnational people. They nest themselves among the community. Their happiest place is to be with people and among the people and having people on their left and their right that they're caring for and living with. But they also, I love this, guarding their sheep at night. What was unique about shepherds is that shepherds held this like dual function, right? Shepherds during the day cared for the sheep. They groomed the sheep and they fed the sheep and they made sure the sheep had enough water and had everything they need to keep growing as healthy sheep. But at night, the sheep were in danger. At night, the sheep were in danger to wolves that might come along and eat the sheep, or other farmers might come along and try to steal the sheep. And so shepherds in our community have this kind of dual role. They're really dynamic, that in daylight, when things are good, when things are safe, they can operate as nourishment and healing and care in our community. But at night, when things are dangerous or scary or unknown, when there's a threat to the body, to the community, to the family, shepherds are often guarding and watching and keeping the community safe. See, shepherds are dynamic. They can behave differently in the day and differently in the night. Wise shepherds understand when it's daytime season and when it's nighttime season. If you're a leadership guru, you've probably read some leadership books that talk about seasons of leadership as war times and peace times. One of the worst things you can do as a leader is lead like it's a wartime and a peacetime, or lead like it's a peacetime and a wartime. Shepherds are brilliant. It's in their bones to understand the difference. There's a passage of scripture, and this is where we're going to spend most of our time today, that helps us really understand shepherds. It's in John chapter 10. Jesus gives this teaching that is often referred to as the Good Shepherd teaching. I want you to kind of picture this. If you catch up in John chapter 10, Jesus is making people very angry to the point that if you read the text, people are beginning to pick stones up off the ground because they want to stone him. They want to kill him. They want to punish him for the things that he's saying. And so the stakes in this teaching are high. And Jesus goes into this rant about the Good Shepherd. This is what he says in John chapter 10, starting in verse 11. He says, I am the good shepherd. The good shepherd lays down his life for the sheep. When the hired hand sees the wolf coming, he leaves the sheep and runs away. That's because he isn't the shepherd. The sheep aren't really his. So the wolf attacks and the sheep scatters them. He's only a hired hand and the sheep don't matter to him. What's Jesus saying here? You've got rocks in your hands. If you think that's going to scare me away from protecting these people, you're fooled. Throw the rocks. I'm not leaving, right? He actually is riffing a little bit here on another teaching of his from the Sermon on the Mount. In Matthew chapter 7, verse 15, Jesus says this in the Sermon on the Mount. Watch out for false prophets, he says. They come to you in sheep's clothing. Who do you think wore sheep's clothing? Shepherds, right? It was the shepherds who wore sheep's clothing. They made clothes out of the sheep. He says, watch out for false prophets. They come to you in sheep's clothing. They pose as sheep. They act like they care for you. They act like they want the best for you. But, he says, inwardly, they are ferocious wolves. They look like shepherds, but actually they're wolves. And it's by their fruit you will recognize them. So what's the point of all this, right? That sheep are willing to protect the sheep. That they'll protect the sheep. That there's at times this protector or this warrior vibe that sheep will go to when it's the night, when it's a wartime, when there's stones in the hands of the accusers. He goes on in verse 14 in the Good Shepherd passage, John 10. He says, I am the Good Shepherd. I know my own sheep, and they know me. Just as the Father knows me, I know the Father and give my life up for the sheep. Now, this is interesting. Now, in this Good Shepherd, the Good Shepherd also knows the people, knows the sheep, is this kind of incarnational healer in their midst. See, Good shepherds are protectors and warriors at times, but also are healers and knowers at times. I think this is sometimes challenging. I want to talk about this in both ways. Sometimes these conversations are uniquely challenging for some women in our midst, especially if you're a woman who has kids or you've grown up having children. And maybe the systems and structures in your life have put you into a place where you've had to be a nurturer, right? For whatever reason, right? You found yourself in that role. Or maybe you grew up in a house where as a woman, that's the role that the women played, right? In the house, the women were the nurturers and the carers. But there's actually a part of you that sometimes has this nature to want to protect, to keep watch in the night, to guard, right? But that's never been a welcome posture for women in your culture. Sometimes when we have these APES conversations, women score high on shepherd because that's been the function under the systems that they've been a part of. But actually, when they begin to dig into this, they lean more and more towards apostles and prophets, but they've grown up in a system and a structure that's not allowed women to be like apostles and prophets. I've had this conversation with men too, where maybe you grew up in a way where men don't sit and listen to people and care for people and participate in healing conversations with people. Yet that energy is inside of you, but you've never had a male example of that in your entire life. Or you grew up in a home where the male example of that actually pushed that part of you away, that it was unmanly to be with people and to heal people and to be a healing presence in someone's life. I find that the systems and structures of our day often isolate our shepherds in a way they can't function in their full shepherdness because of the narratives that exist around the culture, because of perhaps your gender or a role that you played in your family. I actually think this is exactly what's happening in Ephesus as well, that the Romans had really, really strict rules and regulations about what men do and about what women do. Actually, the Jews, too, had really strict regulations about what the men do and about what the women do. But you'll notice in the book of Ephesus, there's no gender applied to any of this. That actually among us are apostles, prophets, evangelists, shepherds, and teachers, that they are men and women in our midst that embody these places. Being a shepherd in our community, I wanted to give a little bit of space here as well to talk about some of the frustrations that shepherds might feel in a community, especially a community like ours. Shepherds, when we get into like peace times, right? The apostles in our midst, when it's daylight, the apostles in our midst, they often, that's the time when apostles are like, all right, it's peacetime. Let's start something new, right? Let's build on this. Let's go somewhere else. Let's add a new ministry. Let's do a new thing. And the shepherds are like, whoa. We just got to peacetime. Like, can't we just enjoy our time together a little bit? And the apostles are like, no, this is the time to start building things again. And sometimes these apostles can be so frustrating to the shepherds. Often our prophets in our midst, they're always the one like speaking up for those on the margins. They're always the one calling into the questions, the systems, and the structures on which we operate around. Maybe in your family, they're always the one at Thanksgiving dinner disrupting the peace, right? And the shepherds in our midst be like, can you just be quiet for one meal? Can we just get through like 1 month without calling into question all of the systems and structures and who they oppress and who they don't oppress? Can we just get through one season of this? Shepherds in our midst can sometimes get really frustrated with the evangelists, especially as a community gets more and more healthy, because the evangelists are like, I know this person and this person and this person and this person. And they'll go out and they'll like find this person and they'll drop them off at your doorstep. And then the evangelists are like, see ya. Right? And you're like, can you just stop dropping people off to me? Right? I can't be healing everybody. I can't sit and listen to everyone's problems. But I think as we move through these seasons of health, you know what those apostolic leaders really need in their life? Is a shepherd who sees them. A shepherd who sees that that apostolic leader is taking on a ton of risk by speaking new things and moving into the future. They're taking on a ton of risk and they are scared too. They just happen to be courageous enough to take those steps. And you know what they need is they need a shepherd to come alongside and say, I see you. I see you. I care for you. And I'm here for you. Let me tell you about the prophets in our midst with this. You have this prophetic energy in your bones. You've probably lost friends. You probably have family who don't talk to you anymore. You've probably been ostracized from communities. You've been pushed away because you've spoken truth to power, and power always fights back. You know what these prophets need in our community? Shepherds to come alongside of them and say, I see you. I see you and I want to heal your soul. I want to walk with you through the pain of all the loss you face. I want to make sure that you're patched up and that you can still stand and continue to speak truth to power. As these evangelists are out and they're trying to connect people and connect people and connect people, can I just tell you, shepherds, as much as you long for those evangelists to stick around and help, they can't. They can't. Like if evangelists are out there in the world and they're dropping people off who need help, if they stay here too long, they're going to lose all of their evangelistic energy and get really, really sad. So they need prophets that they can connect hurting people to. They need prophets in their lives that they can connect people who need health and healing in their life. Now, the reason I'm leaving out teachers here is because shepherds and teachers, they get along just fine. They're built from the same cloth. They want the same thing. They want our community to be healthy, and they really, really get along quite well. But let me say this to our shepherds in our midst. Healthy shepherds move towards the human and not the action. As frustrating as apostles in our midst might be, as frustrating as the prophet might be for disunifying things once again, introducing chaos in the community again, as frustrating as those evangelists might be, healthy shepherds can move towards the human and not allow their own souls to get burdened by the action. And let me say this to the shepherds, and this might be the most important thing I say to the shepherds in our midst today, is that it's the good shepherd who is crucified. Nobody else needs to get crucified. That so often in our midst, shepherds, they work and they work and they care and they care and they care and they care. And they lay their own lives on the cross and they burn out. It is not your job to burn your life down to nothing for the sake and the health of the community. That good shepherds need to have shepherds in their life too. That you also need to have seasons and boundaries where you recognize I need to spend some time with the good shepherd and recoup my soul too so I can continue on and live healthy in the community. Let me read to you the end or the next portion of this John chapter 10 passage. It's right there. Jesus says this, it's why the Father loves me. I give up my life so that I can take it up again. Listen to Jesus here. No one takes it from me. I give it up because why? I want to. I want to. I have the right to give it up, and I have the right to take it up again. I received this commandment from my Father. Listen, healthy shepherds maintain agency over their own sacrifice. Let me say that again. Healthy shepherds maintain agency over their sacrifice. Let me tell you something about me. This quiz that we've been passing around at how people discern maybe where they fit in this APES Theogenetics paradigm. Every time I score quite low on S. I score quite low on S. And so as I was preparing for this, I thought, you know what? Probably some other people should speak into this that aren't me, okay? And so I want to invite two shepherds in our community to come and share with us, Amy Coolbaugh and Kyle Herrick. Why don't we give them a little round of applause? Yeah, welcome. I want to invite you guys both to come up and find a chair. But Amy and Kyle have been shepherding in our community for a very long time. That they have shepherded our community, and there's been seasons where both of them we have gone through, our community has gone through night seasons, and they've needed to guard and watch and look out for our community. But then there's also been seasons that have been like light seasons, have been good seasons where they come along different kinds of people towards health and healing. And so I thought it'd be good for our community to hear a little bit about the experience of being a shepherd. So why don't we start here? Amy, why don't you go first on this one? As we've been talking about this whole concept of theogenetics, what has captured your attention from these conversations?
It's funny because as Cory asked the question, I didn't know if it was going to be the same question as the first one because I'm pretty off the cuff on answering, but the answer's still the same. It's that this has been a season where every week people get to hear new ways maybe, and it includes everybody in this space. So like every single week you get to come and get to hear something either new, God gets to speak in a way of like, hey, this is you, and each person can find themselves in the sermon. Yeah.
How about you, Kyle? What has captured you as we've been moving through this conversation over the last 5 weeks?
Well, is my mic on? Oh, there we go.
Yeah.
All right. I've been it's funny, I think I know a lot, and I'm learning, and that's such a good thing, that I'm learning something new about myself, about a gift that I have, and I'm getting to see when he was talking about the shepherds and the unhealthy side, and I can think back and go, oh, I remember that time. Oh, I remember where I thought I had all the answers, and I was meddling rather than being healthy and caring for the sheep among me, right? Which I am also a sheep and also in need of a shepherd.
Yeah.
And so it's been fascinating to think of just how we all, not just the pastor, the shepherd, the teacher, the apostle, the evangelist, we're all a part of this. Like the church is just not a pastor up here. It's not just the worship on stage. It's not just the tech team in the back. It's all of us, not the people out in the lobby. Every single one of us in this room is a gift. Yeah,
that's good. Yeah. One of the things that I think this is true of all of them, but I think shepherds especially, you're shepherding. You can't turn it off. It like spills into like every part of your life. I wonder, Kyle, if maybe you want to talk a little bit about what shepherding looks like in your life. This shows up in your profession, yes, but also in your family, in your friendships, your relationships. What does that look like for you?
So I'm very in tune with the nonverbals that people carry, right? And so I will zero in on a family member or a friend if I can tell that there's something off. Like we wear our emotions, right? Whether we think we're doing a good job at hiding it, but we're not. You're not doing it for the shepherds. The shepherds can see it.
See through it.
They can see through it. So for my family specifically, who's over there, and I can look at. I don't want to cry when I'm talking about them, but they hold like my prayers for my family. Like as a parent, you're screwing your kids up in some way, right? I mean, if we're all honest, we know we've done it because we're human, right? And the Good Shepherd's still healing us. And so, but my heart is just so for it. Like I make a way to just talk to them. I want them to know how much I love them. I hope they know how much I love them, every single one of them, and how I long for just their healing. So that's specifically on that family side. Yeah. That expands into friendships and everything else. So, yeah.
That's great. Now, Amy is on staff with us here part-time, and specifically Amy helps people take their first steps, some like early steps in their faith. And you are so uniquely gifted to walk with people in that season. Maybe share a little bit about what that looks like, what those conversations are like, or some of us here might be even considering like there's some steps I want to take. How do I do that? How do I get shepherded into those and through those first steps?
I think the thing with here and what I've been allowed to do in this space doesn't make sense, but it's because I get to be who I am in that. And it's just sitting with the person. So it's not a formula. It's not a check the box off. I actually really push back against that. Mm-hmm. But it's seeing the people that come to me and figuring out their formula. Like what is it that God has in you? Because a lot of times what we think may not necessarily be what God has for us. Mm. I thought I was going to do data processing input behind the scenes, and the first time I went to talk to someone, and that wasn't what God had for me. And when I look back 8 years ago at that, I can't imagine if the person across from me didn't go, yeah, no, that's not what I see in you. So I think that's what all of us need, regardless of what it is to be seen and to know and have somebody just see something maybe a little different and challenge us and ask us to try new things maybe and have a place to figure it out, because I don't think any of us fully know. Even with this series and hearing Cory today, there's differences in hearing Shepherd because, people lovingly speak other stuff into you of what you are, who you are. And I'm like, no, like this is, who I am, so.
Yeah, one of the things that I think is unique about being a shepherd is sometimes the church, especially when we're like growing and there's new people around, we can become pretty administrative. Like we got to move people through, we got to get people into things, like people involved, and church can become like a conveyor belt for people. And I think, and this is not, I think every church ends up in seasons where we got to kind of step back from the table and go, wait a minute, right? Like we're missing the human reality here. We're not just pushing people through programs. And this is where shepherds like Amy come along and can just slow down with people and sit with people and help them in these seasons and take these steps. One of the things that, Amy and I have talked about this as well is that like sometimes, with Amy working here, sometimes like there's like this administrative pieces where like, it's my job to be the boss of the staff or whatever. And you could build okay, so you've got 10 hours a week, how many hours you just sit and meet with people? It's like, well, that doesn't encapsulate everything. Like if you're a shepherd and you sit with someone for an hour who's going through something, you might have spent an hour preparing your own heart for that meeting. And then you probably left that meeting or laying in bed at night, praying for that person, grieving for that person, thinking about how you might help heal that person or point that person towards healing. So the emotional labor that shepherds carry can't be quantified. Like you can't just put hours on that like some of the other roles, and which is why I think this conversation is so important, right? For us as a body to recognize shepherds in our midst and the emotional tasks and labor they carry. Tell me a little bit, we'll start with you, Amy, when you think about your life and this kind of shepherding that bleeds out of you, how have you had to mature through that? Like what are some things you've had to learn along the way to help you stay healthy?
That I can't do it all, that I can't be a lone shepherd, that I have to let people in. And because to be healthy and be good, you have to have people, like last service I was looking at Kyle a lot, but this one, as Cory was talking, I've got, my friend Courtney over here leaning forward and looking at me. And that's what we need. To be healthy, you've got to have who's speaking into your life, who are you able to receive from, who is able to push on you, and who can you freely be frustrated or angry or want to, punch something or scream and have safety to be able to do that. And just be, because you can't carry it all, you can't do it all. Being able to know, to be able to discern between seasons. Sometimes a season in life is too heavy for you to carry much of anyone else, and to be okay with that, because when it's your core of your being to want to be that caretaker and to want to step in, you've got to be able to recognize when it's your time to be taken care of and receive, and sit in that.
Yeah. You want to jump on that, Kyle?
What's the question again?
Oh, yeah. How have you matured over the years? Like, what are some, or maybe some hurdles that were hard to get over in maturity as a shepherd?
Yeah, I guess it's knowing, it was becoming more discernful about when people don't need my help.
Huh.
Yeah, when they don't want it, actually, to be honest. Not thinking that, oh no, they just don't know they need my help, right? And like when I think about the word meddle, is like, it's like meddling in other people's affairs, right?
Yeah.
And so realizing that I am not the good shepherd, right? That they have a shepherd, right? That comes before me and will be after me. And so hearing his voice and be able to step back and go, no, you know what? They're taken care of. They have a shepherd.
Yeah.
And so that's probably one of the that's an easy way for me to say,
yeah,
that's where my health has come in that. So, and that's a wrestle still to this day,
yeah.
right? So,
I think the reason I wanted to talk with both of you today is because I think you are both incredible examples of shepherds who are in the field, right? That you're shepherds who are among the sheep, among the body, among the people. That you've been willing in seasons to keep watch at night. That you've longed and cried and prayed for health in our community and in difficult seasons and tough seasons. But you've also been like the first in line when it's time to like be in the light and be in the daylight and come around people and support people. I think I'd be curious to know from both of you, what do you long for us? Like, what do you long for our church and our community? You know, from the guts of your soul, what do you want to see more than anything be true here among the people of Westwinds? Kyle, why don't you take this one first?
I'm really happy that we're doing this series because the church needs its people. Mm-hmm. Westwinds needs you. We need you. You have purpose here. You have agency. You are a gift. There are so many people, all you shepherds out there that the Lord's tugging on your heart right now. We need you. We need you to look after people. We need you so that one of the biggest things is the burnout that comes from this vocation, right? It's not a vocation, from this living. And we need you apostles. We need the prophets. We need the shepherds. We need the evangelists. We need the teachers. And we need them to wake up and get going because this world, this community of Jackson needs healing, right? We need healing here. And there's so many people out in this community that are hurting, that don't have a home, that don't know they're welcome. And so, yeah, that's enough.
That's good. Amy?
And the way that we balance each other so well is, as he was talking, I'm like, the biggest person that needs you in this space is you. And so what do I long for? I long for every person that's sitting in these seats right now, if they're watching online, maybe you haven't even been here before, that you take the time and space that it is for you to believe that the good shepherd loves you and created you and can heal you, and that you have space to come into a place and be safe to wrestle. If you want to hear stories, come find me. There hasn't been a space. And to be in a season where when he keeps referencing the darkness and the way we can protect and do, I feel like I've been doing that for a long time here. And it took me a minute to wrestle through with the fact that I don't have to do that right now. We're in a different season, and that it's so great. But whatever season you're in, this is a calling out to you to become fully who you are and give the gift. You know, I think of all the little things that have been said. You know, if you're not fully who you are, then you're taking something away from everyone around you, including yourself. And when I look back and listen to this sermon and think 8 years ago or 2 months ago, just how great it is to be in a place that you can be safe, to wrestle and question and be curious and try things, all of that. Like, I just hope that we continue to grow in that and people start believing it. Take the risk on yourself that you are worthy, and this is a place to do it and be safe.
Good. Love that. Amen. The way we wanted to close our gathering today is we wanted to gather around the table. It was a night that Jesus was betrayed. He's sitting with his earliest followers, his disciples. and he gives them bread and wine and tells them to eat and drink as this reminder that we build our life around Jesus, like all of us, right? He's looking at these disciples who fought and didn't get along and didn't trust each other, and some of them had just committed like egregious things in the movement, and he's saying all of you should eat and drink and participate as you move into the future together. And so I wanted Kyle and Amy, so why don't you guys bring the table out to serve us today for two of our shepherds to be able to serve communion to us, or Eucharist if you come from a different tradition. But we actually wanted to take it a step further, that some of you in this room have either through this process, through taking the quiz or through the conversations we've been having, or even as we gather this morning, the shepherd energy in you is strong. You like feel it in you. And we wanted our shepherds in the room today to actually come to the table first and be served by two other shepherds, and then to turn around with the bread and the juice and serve the rest of the community. I mean, isn't this the image and the picture of what shepherds do in our midst all the time? Is to receive nourishment from the good shepherd and then turn around and offer that nourishment to the souls of the rest of us. At the very end of Jesus's Good Shepherd I am teaching, he says this. He says, "My sheep listen to my voice. I know them and they follow me. I give them eternal life. They will never die and no one will snatch them from my hand." We think the presence of Jesus is life-changing, and we think it's for everyone. And so it is our tradition, and this is not shaming any other traditions, but it's our tradition at Westwinds to practice a wide open table, which means if you'd like to participate today, we'd love to have you. This is Jesus's table, and he's inviting you to participate in getting nourishment from his body and his blood, his story, his history, his presence with us today. So if you would like to not participate, that's also okay. But we want you to know that you were invited to Jesus's table, and Jesus would absolutely be thrilled to have you there. And so this is going to be awkward for some shepherds, okay? I know some of you, you prefer to just kind of stay in the quiet and go pray with someone in the corner, or hang out after service and find someone who needs you. I get that. I totally get that. And standing up in front of people is not your jam, all right? But today we would love it if it was your jam, okay? We would love to invite you. So I just want to invite if you are a shepherd in the room and you feel this inside of your bones, if you feel like this is something that God is raising up inside of you, I want to invite you to come to the table now and be served by Kyle and Amy, and then turn around and serve our community. So shepherds, come first. Come to the table. You can go right now.